Welcome back, you are welcome back to the evening edition. This is the Daily Debate. But first, an update on the escalating crisis in Ukraine. A central Kiev protest camp is engulfed in flames as police are advancing on protesters. We're seeing the live footage right now on screen, and of course, we will keep on updating you on this during the hours. And we're back to our news today. A tornado struck Italian politics this week. Former Prime Minister Enrico Letta is out after only 10 months in office. The young Matteo Renzi is in. Italy is ranked as the 6th biggest economic market in the world and has been struggling since the EU economic crisis began. So what will be the influence of the power change in Italy on the future of the European Union? And can Renzi succeed more than his predecessors? Joining me tonight is Dr. Esther Lopatin. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming.
Good evening.
Manager of the Center for European Studies at the IDC Herzliya, and Dr. Alex Coman. Good evening. Value creation expert at the Academic College of Tel Aviv, Jaffa. Thank you both for coming. So before we're starting to talk about what the future predicts for Italy, I want to have a little, let's say, summarize the situation, the current situation in Italy.
The current situation is awful. Okay, I teach at Bocconi in Milan. And in terms of politics, people were very happy when Italy joined the European Union because they felt that Italy was so corrupt. Berlusconi was elected using votes from Sicily, and they hoped that the European Union would save the political situation in Italy, which it did not. In terms of economics, Italy has a BBB rating, which is very low. Israel has an A+, and Italy has a BBB.
And for our viewers to understand what you just said?
It means that there is a reasonable probability that it would default on its debt, okay? Similarly to what happened to Greece and Cyprus. In terms of in the social aspect, Italy is not growing in terms of population. It's very polarized between the north and the south. And finally, technologically, it's what we call in strategy stuck in the middle. Its products, if we think about Torino and the automobiles, are neither cheap nor reliable. So it's really, I mean, except for fashion, it's stuck in the middle. So it's really in a very tough spot.
So from where can Renzi start, if he can?
Well, I think that he has like a pretty ambitious agenda. Like he already pledged to actually to lower the unemployment rate in Italy, which stands today like at 12.7%, and also to revise the tax systems. And he said like he's probably going to do that like over the next few months, which sounds pretty ambitious. But at the same time, I would say that Renzi is very popular, like a figure in Italy today. Like he's a kind of like a rock star in Italy. Just a colleague of mine from Italy told me recently that in a recent opinion poll, it was said like 25% of the Italian women wouldn't mind to spend a night with Renzo. So the guy is very popular. I mean, like, it's very clear that, like he's...
But it takes
he's
a little
kind
bit,
of like...
I want to believe that it takes a little bit. You know what? So, we had the same situation here in Israel, I have to say, when Yair Lapid, the Minister of Economy, was elected. As you recall, it was the same situation. But I would like to believe that people are going to vote for him a little bit more than his just good looks.
Why?
It's not clear whether it's going to be successful, because for the moment it seems like Berlusconi's party, pledge, to support, Letta. So it means that, it's going to be very difficult for him to form a government. So it's not really clear whether he would be able actually to form a new government. And also, when it comes to his pretty ambitious agenda, I think it's going to be very difficult for him to tackle, one of the most problematic problems of Italy today, which is a kind of like the fact that Italy tend to import more than export. And I think this is something that economists have been saying that it, started in 1997, and it doesn't seem that it's going to change, anytime soon. So
I'm trying to understand the economy situation is so in its worst case, maybe in its worst hours, in its worst decades that they experienced in Italy. How do you start to rebuild a country from this situation?
Well, first of all, I agree. I mean, as a man, I'm really antagonistic to good-looking men. So I'm very suspicious. I was suspicious about Yair Lapid, and I'm suspicious about him as well, because I'm suspicious about too much charisma. But I mean, I'm very skeptical because there's the world is going through a major change, in the sense that Europe, which led in terms of technology, and the US are giving up to China and the Far East. So if you think about the north of Italy, which was supporting the south, the north is really threatened dramatically. Fiat has acquired Chrysler, but it's really unclear whether these are two struggling giants. So you need to to purge the country politically, which he pledged to do. You need to build it around a new economic driver, which is basically tourism. Because much of what you see in Italy is people going to Venice, and I would take Venice as a metaphor for Italy. People going to this fabulous city, which used to be so powerful, and today is a Disneyland. And the way to actually drive some growth into this country is very, very difficult.
Well, I think that, many economists are actually arguing that the acuteness of the economic crisis in Italy is, to some extent, is over. Like, Italy, of course, the economic situation is not so good, but nevertheless, it's not in acute condition, I would say. I mean, yeah, the unemployment rate stands at 12.7%, and last year it was lower. And youth unemployment is it's like more than 40%. And when it comes to, the national debt, it stands at like 127% of the GDP, yes. Which actually, by the way, in order to be a member of the Eurozone, in order to sustain actually membership of the Eurozone, the national debt should not exceed 60% of the GDP. So it means like in Italy,
3 times
it's like, more than twice. But still, if you compare the situation in Italy compared to Greece, it's still not as bad as in Greece, because the national debt in Greece is like over 180%. Unemployment in Greece is something like 27, 28%, and youth unemployment is over 55%. So it is not great, but still.
Let's hear what the Italians has to say. Gian Maria Evans, he's not with me. Okay, he's not with me yet. But the Italians, you said, I find it very hard to believe him. I find it very hard to buy the good look. Let's say, he. Okay, I'm not going to continue. But how are the Italians really believe him?
Well, the good news about him, I mean, what would cause the Italians to believe him is that he's an opportunist. I mean, he met with Berlusconi trying to come up with some rules to prevent the rapid change of governments. I mean, since Berlusconi, there have been 4 governments in Italy, mm-hmm. which is in itself something bad. And when we talk about youth unemployment, given the fact that there's very little youth, because Italians have a very low birth rate. Mm-hmm. This is a problem all over Europe in terms of pensions, etc. That many countries, I mean, Italy is not growing in terms of birth. So, and he has no experience in the parliament. He's completely green.
Are Italy or Italians are the type of a type of society that will go outside to the street and protest like we're seeing all over the world?
What do you mean, like protesting, like against the economic crisis?
Yes, against the economic crisis, protesting in the streets. You know, Israelis, for example, they're not protesting in the streets. They're not going out. The situation, sometimes they are.
It's not helping them.
Because it's not helping them, so they are just accepting the bad burden. They're accepting what the government is putting on them, and they're continuing to live. The Italians are the same?
I have seen protests in Naples, but they were more like the Israeli protests. They were not Greek style where they actually burned cars and broke into banks, etc. They were like people sitting outside and
now I want to see if the Italians can go out to the streets and buy a little bit more than the good looks of Renzi. Gian Maria Venzoli, are you with us?
Sure.
Yes,
good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us, international analyst Gian Maria Venzoli. So what are the Italians' thoughts about Renzi?
I totally agree with the points that your two guests made regarding the economic situation we are experiencing in Italy. I think that there has been economic stagnation for the past probably 5 years. So that does not do any good to the economy. And that's why they want to have a new leader that would be able to do the job that Berlusconi, which was on and off in power since 1994, has promised but never delivered. So regarding the fact that Renzi is a young, handsome guy, I think that works in his favor. And for the country, I mean, having someone like Renzi with this approach, kind of like Tony Blair had in the 90s for England, I think is a good like political strategy, because we have to remember that we are measured not only on the economical data, but also on the impressions that our leaders have abroad. And I think that maybe that was the time to change nowadays, to have a new leader committed with a clean background and with some sort of consensus, which nowadays he really has inside his party and also in the center and center-right parties. So I think he's, as I said yesterday, I think he's the right person right now.
Gian Maria, you said yesterday and the day before that he is the right person at the right time. Although we heard here Dr. Lopatin saying that maybe he's a little bit over his head, maybe he's giving a big plan when he cannot really handle this plan in the near future.
That's a very good point. Well, it's true, he has a big plan because he wants to make substantial reforms in the next 3-4 months, which I don't really believe he can do that. However, at least he gave some deadlines. He gave some deadlines that usually politicians, they're smart, they don't do that. So he was like, he puts himself 100% in this job. He said that he wants to reform the job market, I think in March, reform the public administration in April, and reform the tax system in May. I mean, he has an agenda that's very ambitious, it is true. It's extremely ambitious. But at least he can measure his actions and he can put the people of his party on the line. This is what I'm going to do. If we don't do that, I'm going to resign.
Okay, Gian Maria Vanzoli, thank you very much for this. Good looking and ambitious. I think it's a good match. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
So the Italians are really enthusiastic about the whole situation, I have to say.
Yeah, but I think it's overambitious. I think that when you think about a country as big as Italy, I mean, you mentioned the fact that it's not as bad as Greece, but Greece is smaller, so it was easier to save. Italy is much larger. So to reform such a country with such a corrupt history, profoundly corrupt, I think it's not realistic. I mean, I find it so difficult to and you compared him with Yair Lapid. Yair Lapid proved himself to be not a serious player, a very naive player with committees and so.
You're talking about corruption, and I believe that in order to correct corruption, you need to re-educate the whole system. You need to start making people see another way, that it's not the way that they're used to.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, the way I see it, like the way many economists actually see it, there are two biggest problems for Italy now. It's first actually to match productivity to salary. I mean, was actually what the Germans said, all along, that's one of the problems in Greece, in all the countries that the GIPS, Greece, Italy, Ireland, Portugal, and Spain, that there should be like, people actually got paid more than actually they produce.
They used to call them pigs rather than GIPS, I think.
I know, they changed it. It's not politically correct, so they changed the name. But it seems that, they have to match productivity to salary. And strange enough, like economists are saying that in Germany, since like almost the end of the 90s until recently, the salary increase was lower than in Southern European countries. So although they were not productive, they got actually higher salary than in Germany, in Northern European countries. The second biggest problem, as I mentioned before, is the problem of that since 1997, the international competitiveness of Southern European countries such as Italy has decreased. So it means that they tend to import more than they export. And if this is not going to change...
I'm sorry, but I have to cut this discussion. Thank you very much for both of you for coming to the studio. And thank you, our viewers. We're going out for a small break, 10 minutes break, an update from our news desk, and we will be back. Don't go anywhere.